Madam President, I'm pleased that the senator from South Carolina is going to have amendments that will try to bring this budget that is going to increase the debt in our country down to a level that can sustain our future generations. So I'm proud to work with him to try to do that. I rise to discuss 3 amendments that I will offer tomorrow as well. I truly believe that we have made some progress today because some of the amendments that have passed will have an effect that I think will be positive on this budget, because anywhere I go in my state or anywhere I go in this country, people are talking about the mounting debt, and it's almost breathtaking because we have never seen this kind of debt. This debt, juxtaposed against our gross domestic product, is the highest that we have seen since World War II. So we know that World War II and the Great Depression before that were extraordinary times. And clearly, Madam President, these too are extraordinary times. But we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to our country and to the hardworking people of our country and the people who have lost their jobs in our country to act responsibly. We have passed a $1 trillion stimulus package. We have passed another $1 trillion in spending just for this year, much of which was duplicative with the stimulus package. So that's $2 trillion that we have obligated in the first 2 months of this year. Now, we are looking at a budget that over a 10-year period is going to increase the debt by another $9 trillion. Now, Madam President, that's not sustainable. We are coming to a tipping point in which we will not be able to sell our debt because there will be a fear that we cannot repay it. That will be a financial crisis for sure. So I am offering 3 amendments, and I would like to start with amendment number 866. It would provide permanent marriage penalty relief. My amendment would establish a point of order against any legislation that will impose or increase a marriage penalty, which is the most egregious anti-family action in our tax code. One of my highest priorities in the Senate has been to relieve American taxpayers of this punitive burden. The marriage penalty pushes married couples into a higher tax bracket than 2 single earners earning the same combined income. After years of fighting this issue of equity, the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts made a great stride toward eliminating the marriage penalty by lowering tax rates, doubling the standard deduction, and simplifying other elements of the tax code. Prior to the Bush tax cuts, an estimated 25 million couples paid a penalty for being married in 1999, amounting to approximately $1,400 per couple. Enacting marriage penalty relief was a giant step for tax fairness, but we may lose it. Even as married couples use the money they now save to put food on the table or clothes on their children or send them to college, the budget that has been proposed by the President would raise taxes on the top 2 income brackets, both of which still include a marriage penalty. As a result of increasing the tax rates of this bracket, the President further exacerbates the marriage penalty for married couples in those brackets, effectively reversing the progress we have made in ensuring that marriage would not be a taxable event. The benefits of marriage are well established, yet without marriage penalty relief, the tax code gives a disincentive for people to become married. My amendment would affirm this body's commitment to the institution of marriage by creating a point of order against any legislation that would impose or increase a marriage penalty. We should be celebrating marriage. Marriage and families are the core of our society. We should not be penalizing it. Amendment number 868 enacts a permanent deduction for state and local sales taxes. I have worked since I came to the United States Senate to rectify a tax inequity that plagues 8 states. They are the 8 states that have a sales tax but not an income tax. Before 1986, taxpayers in these states, Texas, Washington, Nevada, Wyoming, South Dakota, Alaska, Florida, and Tennessee, had the ability to deduct their sales taxes like every tax-paying citizen from states that impose income taxes. Unfortunately, citizens of some states were treated differently after 1986 when the deduction for state and local taxes, sales taxes that is, was eliminated. Together, the 8 states that impose sales taxes in lieu of income taxes fought to correct this injustice from 1986 until 2004, when we finally did correct it. Since then, we have provided extensions every few years, with the current extension set to expire at the end of this year. While the budget before us assumes an extension of that valuable relief for an additional 2 years through 2011, what we really need is to make this relief permanent. Now the majority leader has an amendment which I've co-sponsored to accomplish this goal. I support his effort and I welcome his leadership on the issue because it is an initiative that we must accomplish to ensure fairness for our constituents. And he certainly was one of the leaders in correcting the inequity in 2004, and I appreciate that. While I support his effort, I am not opposed to the approach he is taking, but I do today rise to offer an alternative approach that ensures a permanent sales tax extension by actually accounting for it directly in the budget. There is a key distinction between our amendments. The majority leader's amendment requires our state's tax equity to be paid for by other changes in the budget, whether it is spending cuts or other tax increases. I disagree that our state should have to pay for tax relief that not only pays for itself, but is granted to every other taxpayer that do not have sales taxes but do have income taxes, or maybe they have sales taxes and income taxes. It is a fundamental issue of fairness, and while I will support any measure that makes the sales tax deduction permanent, I think we should not have to be held to a higher standard than other states when we're dealing with tax relief that really pays for itself. We should be equal in this country. The federal government should not be giving breaks to people who have income taxes, but not the same breaks to people who have sales taxes. All the states collect taxes. They do it in different ways, and the federal government should not pick winners and losers. The amendment I am offering today will permanently end the discrimination suffered by the 8 states that have no income tax but do have a sales tax and don't have the option of that deduction. There should be a deduction, and you should be able to choose. People in an income tax state should be able to choose that that is their deduction, or if they would prefer, they could also deduct sales taxes. But the people in sales tax states that don't have an income tax should have the same rights. I urge the adoption of amendment number 868 when it is brought forward tomorrow. And Madam President, I have the third amendment, number 867. This is the Outer Continental Shelf Expansion Budget Resolution Amendment. I want to speak in support of the amendment that I have filed with my colleagues, Senators Bond, Vitter, and Murkowski, which ensures that we will expand domestic offshore energy production on the Outer Continental Shelf. Section 202 of the budget resolution directs that we reduce our dependence on foreign sources of energy by producing green jobs, promoting renewable energy development, establishing a clean energy investment fund, and encouraging conservation and efficiency. While I support these initiatives, which will play a role in making our country more energy independent, we cannot overlook our own domestic oil and gas resources in the outer continental shelf, which this budget before us does. The goal of reducing our nation's dependence on foreign sources of oil is one that both sides of the aisle should be able to agree on. Our president has said we must reduce our nation's imports of oil. It is irresponsible to put our economic and national security in the hands of unstable and unfriendly regimes. Today, we import over 60% of our energy needs. Too much of it comes from unstable and unfriendly regimes like Venezuela and parts of the Middle East. In 2008 alone, we spent close to $475 billion on imported oil. This amendment that I have will reduce America's dependence on foreign sources of energy, minimize future increases in gasoline prices, and help reduce the debt with new lease revenue. We must reduce our dependence on dictators like Hugo Chavez, who control our energy supplies. Increased domestic oil and gas production right here at home in the waters off our shores will help us reduce our foreign dependency and make us more energy independent, and we can do it in an environmentally safe manner. Expanded energy production off U.S. shores will also help us minimize future price increases. With a lack of supply that could force energy prices up, increasing supply will certainly bring it back down. Some will say, well, prices are low now, why should we drill? That is exactly the kind of attitude that will assure that prices go up. We could sit back and wait for oil prices to go back up and then act. But, Mr. President, we have more responsibility and certainly, hopefully, more leadership in the United States Senate than to wait, because we know if supplies dwindle that prices will go up. We have oil right here on our own shores. We need to use it. We are the only nation in the world who has an abundance of energy supplies and refuses to use it. Every other nation either doesn't have energy supplies or is trying very hard to get some kind of energy in their own countries, and we have the capability to provide for our energy independence, and we are not doing it. And, Mr. President, we are letting down the people of our country if we don't. So I urge support for amendment number 867 when we vote tomorrow. Mr. President, I just want to end by saying that I'm a co-sponsor of Senator McCain's amendment that would be a substitute for this budget. I hope to be able to talk on the floor tomorrow about his substitute. I believe that we must produce an alternative to this budget. We have certainly criticized how big it is and how much we have to borrow to pay for it, and the taxes that would have to be raised. This is a budget before us that spends too much, borrows too much, and taxes too much. We can do better in this country, and the substitute that Senator McCain and I and other co-sponsors will certainly do more in the area of bringing our budget down to a sustainable size and doing what is right for this country. It basically freezes spending and adds the rate of inflation so that the programs in place right now will be able to grow with inflation, but it will show the American people that we mean to cut back in the out years of this spending so that we will not increase the debt, and in fact, the McCain substitute will lower the debt that is envisioned in this Obama budget by $3.9 trillion. This would be our first step toward fiscal responsibility and doing what the Senate ought to do. Mr. President, I hope to talk more about the McCain substitute, of which I'm a co-sponsor, because I think it is the responsible approach, and I think it is our responsibility to provide an alternative. And I would also ask unanimous consent at this time to add Senator Brownback as a co-sponsor of Marriage Penalty Amendment number 866.